Access Chapter 2 Executive Director Steve Letsike joins us for more on the developments in Uganda. Steve, a very good evening to you. Good to have your time. Where does this ruling leave, not the ruling, pardon me, the passing of this law, leave queer people in Uganda?
Yeah, good evening to you and to the viewers. Look, Uganda has passed one of the world's toughest anti-gay laws, that calls for life imprisonment, and also death penalty for anyone convicted of homosexuality. This is despite the condemnation, despite the calls not to sign this law, protect human beings, protect human rights. This on its own is actually leaving Ugandan LGBTI in dire situation where they either have to flee their country, and those who remain have to go into hiding, and those who remain public have to always watch their back and while they fight for their own fundamental rights. It doesn't only just end there. It means that people's identities, people's livelihood are disrupted. People can't access services. People won't have equal opportunities and also to live in a prosperous manner. It also means that families are disrupted. What happens to children of mothers who gave birth to them? What happens to families? Because even when you know that your child is queer or your child is LGBT, you must report it. This is the world toughest law, and it's problematic because it actually seeks to erase LGBTI people.
You speak of the activists who are trying to fight this law passed this week. The United Nations encouraging the judiciary in Uganda to basically, quote unquote, do the right thing, right? But I wonder if the activists will have a fair chance, a fair shot at fighting and possibly getting this repealed.
Well, you must understand that in Uganda, this is not the first time, that activists used, the judicial system. In 2009, when it was first introduced, and it was, of course, challenged in court. In 2013, it was then kicked out of court that it is an unjust law. And you can see that legislators, policymakers in Uganda persist on introducing this private bill, and where you see homophobia both by the legislators and by the state, by virtue of the president signing it, it's a state-funded homophobia and transphobia. But one thing that we know about the arms of states is that the judiciary system, if it remains independent and impartial, the judiciary system can stand up to the fundamental rights that are enshrined in the Ugandan constitution, but also that speaks to the regional mechanism and the global mechanism. So the judiciary system becomes the only kind of factor where Ugandan LGBTI can hold on to that system, but it also can hold on to the system of solidarity throughout the world.
And will the international community be able to put any legitimate, I wonder, or useful pressure on Uganda? Because the attempts to dissuade President Museveni from signing this into law have clearly failed, even though there was the threat of sanctions and potential isolation.
No doubt. There's pressures, both positive and negative pressures. The pressures that we've seen, the calls that have been made in terms of condemnation, in terms of diplomacy that has been played by the international community to engage with the Ugandan government, Ugandan president. Of course, they've hit into a deaf call or deaf ears for that matter, and that has created a problem. But also the other pressure that we've seen is the pressures of, the very much religious fundamentalists who actually are well-funded, well-organized. And they are actually bringing a very wrong narrative that suggests that, in fact, if people continue to be queer and gay and LGBTI, they are disrupting family units. I don't know anywhere in the world. In fact, we've seen systems of love of family unity when queer people are also part and recognized and embraced. So we see those who are funding the wrong narrative and a false narrative that seeks to convert people are the ones that are really organized and putting pressure. And no doubt, we've seen President Museveni participate actively in this family value conversation that we need to protect heteronormativity. We need to protect pro-life and so forth. As if like LGBTI people are not pro-life and they are also not family oriented. And these are some of the things that are happening. But what we consistently want to see, the international community, the countries that speak out and that do not allow themselves to be silenced when other people are being oppressed, they must continue standing up. The same way we will still engage our own South African government. When South Africa was being oppressed by these very same colonial laws and colonial legacy and the same prejudice that we have shared as a history, we had solidarity and even going to extent of sanction. No doubt that Uganda must still correct and course correct and never continue to oppress people that needs to be liberated.
What then do you make of the South African government's response to developments in Uganda, and is there anything that you think this country should be doing as far as taking a stance?
I think, look, we have quite a number of things. First, our foreign policy suggests that we must build solidarity. Where there's oppression, we must be able to stand with those who are oppressed. No doubt we must implement, fast forwardly so, the kind of diplomatic aspect that still stand for those who are oppressed. And also the relationship that we share between South Africa and Uganda. We must be able to articulate it clearly to say that in our ties, in our trade ties, in our friends or friendship that we have and we share historically, we cannot watch while people being oppressed or murdered. No doubt we respect the sovereignty of Uganda. South Africa has taken position not only just about Uganda, but in many other countries about the position of sovereignty. But also we have taken a position where we want to contribute to a better world. And part of a contribution of better world is engagement, is coming together and saying this we can do better. Can we look at ways where we find room for coexistence, but also for prosperity for all? Our country has a role and it's a beacon of hope in Africa. And South Africa must show up and must stand up for that better Africa we want.
Steve Letsike, good to speak to you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on News at Prime.